LoveLore Library. Chapter 101. Sun Yilin knocked an arrow and drew his bow, aiming at one of the little guys with a green fruit on its head. It must be said that compared to the red ones, the green ones were more difficult. After all, they were not as conspicuous. Moreover, there were a lot of red ones. They were scattered everywhere and obstructed one's line of sight. It was not enough to only focus on one little guy. If one was not careful and accidentally shot another one would be punished directly. He released the arrow. With a swoosh, everyone stared at the little guys closely. Did he hit or not? After all, the male guest seats were relatively far away. The group of young masters tried their best to get closer. Unfortunately, they could not get past the seats of the nobles. They leaned against the stone railings with exquisite relief sculptures by the lake and stretched their necks. From time to time, the people in front would be pulled on the head by the people behind. This scene was really... A group of people shook their heads. Did he hit? No, that little guy suddenly stopped. The arrow flew past the fruit. What a pity. If he did not stop, he would have hit. Sun Yilin was also helpless as the little guy looked at him with a tilted head. The little guy's eyes seemed to be asking him, "Hey, what are you doing?" Asking him to knock an arrow again seemed to make him feel guilty. This was the disadvantage of domesticated animals compared to wild animals. Moreover, domesticated animals were not afraid of humans. Whether they ran or stopped depended on their preference. It was harder to deal with them than if they kept running or stopping. Fortunately, this arrow had been modified. Otherwise, Sun Yilin could not guarantee that he could continue. Time waits for no one. Sun Yilin took advantage of the little guy's daze and quickly shot another arrow. Good. Both the male and female VIP seats applauded and cheered at the same time. Sun Yilin, on the other hand, was sweating profusely. He had almost shot the little fellow's head. Sun Yilin looked at the incense stick. It took less time than expected. However, when he took out the arrows again, there were only 3 arrows left. He suddenly realized something. Although there was no rule saying that he could only shoot a few arrows, it was obvious that there were only 5 arrows. Did it mean that he only had 5 chances and could miss twice at most? The modified arrow was originally lighter and its lethality was only equivalent to 10% of the original. If he did not control it well, it would probably not even pierce the skin of the fruit. It would definitely not be considered a hit. Which great aunt came up with this idea? Jingwan sat there calmly. Sorry, she couldn't accept Sun Yilin's resentment. The people here had no awareness of protecting animals. Even if they were domesticated, if they were not favored by their masters, they would never be treated well. It was common for them to be abused or beaten to death. Although these little animals looked good, she was sure that they were not favored by any of the masters in Great Elder Princess's mansion. If they were here, they would probably ignore the lives of these little animals. However, Jingwan couldn't bear to see them in danger of being shot to death under her nose. It was one thing if she didn't meet them, but now that she met them, she couldn't remain indifferent. The words increased the difficulty, dispelled everyone's doubts. On the male guest side, those who had a little eyesight had already found the problem after Sun Yilin shot the first arrow. They almost unanimously thought that it was to increase the difficulty. Only Li Hongyuan murmured in an almost inaudible voice, "He is still so soft-hearted." Sun Yilin's third arrow was very successful. He hit the fruit with 1 shot. All the childs applauded him. Although they wanted to see him make a fool of himself, he was also the model of this group of people. If he made a fool of himself, it might affect the image of everyone in the girls' hearts. He only needed 1 more arrow to succeed. Unfortunately, the wish was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. Sun Yilin's 4th arrow missed the fruit again. When they saw the last arrow in the quiver, they all broke out in a cold sweat for him. Probably because it was the most critical arrow, everyone held their breath and stared at him nervously. They even didn't dare to make a sound, as if they were afraid of disturbing him. Good. Alas, before he could finish the word good, the arrow, which was obviously going to the fruit, touched it gently and fell down. Obviously, it was not powerful enough. It was such a pity. He was just a little bit away, how could he? Alas, the first person to shout for him to come down and receive his punishment was followed by more and more people. Since the matter was settled, they just had to happily watch how this young Master Lin would make a fool of himself. Only Jingwan slightly narrowed her eyes and glanced at the incense. Sun Yilin did the same thing. Sister Jia, don't be anxious. It's not over yet. Sun Yijia didn't understand. Sun Yilin quickly ran down the parterre and bent down to pick up the arrow closest to him. He returned to the parterre at an even faster speed and knocked the arrow. With a whoosh, the last green fruit was directly pierced through. It can be done like this. Many people asked this question. Sun Yilin stood on the parterre and smiled as he watched the last spark of the incense extinguish. An old man stroked his beard. The rule is to shoot arrows from the parterre and hit all the green fruits within half an incense's time. If any arrow hits a small animal, it will be considered a failure. It didn't say that under this premise, one can't come down and retrieve the arrow. Although my eyesight isn't good and I can't see the specific situation of the incense, it seems like it was a success. This young master's son is quick-witted. I don't know if it was purposely set up like this. If it is, the person who set it up is also intelligent. After this explanation, many people were enlightened. They only saw 5 arrows and assumed that only 5 arrows could be shot. They forgot to link the rules together. As expected of young Master Lin. Then, was it purposely set up like this? In fact, at the female guest seating area, almost everyone didn't expect this result. They didn't hear about this situation before. How were they going to calculate this? However, the maid standing next to the incense burner said very calmly, young Master Sun Yilin is in line with the rules. It's done. It seemed that she was completely aware of this situation. But she was just a little maid. If she hadn't been instructed in advance, even if she had thought of it, she wouldn't have dared to announce the result on her own. She had to ask for the opinions of the nobles first. Obviously, this was a deliberate setup. It not only tested one's archery ability, but also one's ability to react on the spot. Of course, if one met someone who was very good at archery and could hit the target every time, the following setup would be superfluous. Great Elder Princess looked at Jingwan thoughtfully. Girl Luo, is this your idea again? Jingwan smiled calmly. If it's not a game but a real hunting or even a battlefield, I believe everyone knows what to do, right? Even if the rules of the game are included, you can be more flexible and not so rigid, right? Sun Yilin had already come down from the parterre. Hearing this, he said, Miss, you're so quick-witted that even I was almost fooled. This was purely a compliment. Jingwan smiled faintly. However, some people felt that Jingwan was particularly annoying. Great Elder Princess laughed heartily. Well, you're all smart. You'll be rewarded. You'll all be rewarded. The maid carried up another tray that others didn't know about and sent it to Sun Yilin. You may take what I said just now as empty words. What we carry are all women's household items. It's not suitable for you, so it's inconvenient for us to give them to you. So, Girl Luo gave me an idea. I came up with the same idea. I wrote a note and put it in the purse. But there are only 10 things in total. There are 10 purses. If you take one away, there will be one less. You can take one and go to His Majesty to get the reward another day. As for you, you probably don't care much about it, but you're allowed to give the purse away." This meant that Great Elder Princess's promise of reporting to His Majesty if she performed well had been changed into an actual benefit. It should be known that if Great Elder Princess just reported it to His Majesty and forgot about it, or His Majesty forgot about it, there was nothing she could do about it. But now, it was different. She could ask His Majesty for a reward in person with a purse. It was one thing to get something good, but more importantly, she could meet His Majesty. It was needless to say which one would leave a deeper impression on His Majesty just by hearing a name or meeting him in person. In this way, even if there was a huge risk of being embarrassed, the young masters in the male guest seats would still hope that they could be chosen. It would be impolite of me to refuse. Sun Yilin took out a purse and then sincerely bowed to Jingwan. "I thank you on behalf of the 10 young masters." This was a real gratitude to Jingwan. Jingwan hurriedly avoided it. "I don't deserve your thanks. It's all Great Elder Princess's credit. I just said a few words." "You deserve it." "Why not?" Sun Yilin wanted it, but Great Elder Princess also wanted it. Only families with titles of nobility could benefit their descendants. Other families, even the elders of the inner cabinet, could only rely on their descendants' own efforts to make progress. When they entered the officialdom, their fathers and grandfathers could help them. Moreover, every family wanted to gain benefits for their own families, so the competition was very fierce. The reward this time could save 10 people's hard work for 10 or 20 years. If the reward was out of Great Elder Princess's mansion and fell into the hands of a poor child, it was more likely to be a chance for him to soar to the sky. In that case, it was not just a person who owed Jingwan a favor, but a whole family or even a whole family. This was not only a hypothesis, but was likely to come true in this place where clans were highly valued. Jingwan probably just came up with this idea on the spur of the moment and didn't think too far ahead. She just thought that it would be a pity to bury some people who might not be good at studying but were really talented. If she could help one of them, she might find a great talent for the Qi Yuan dynasty. She just mentioned it and didn't expect that Great Elder Princess would agree. Now, not only did she directly expose her, but also confirmed that it was her credit, which made Jingwan feel a little helpless. Seeing her like this, Great Elder Princess knew that she must have understood the interests in this matter. She didn't feel proud or complacent, and there was a trace of a smile in her eyes. It was really rare to see a girl who could see through things and was not easily blinded by interests. Great Elder Princess didn't break the convention in vain and clearly showed her love for her. "Don't worry. Even if the sky falls down, there will be someone taller to hold it up." Jingwan laughed. It had already happened, so there was no need to think more about it. Great Elder Princess saw that she regained her composure so quickly and couldn't help nodding in her heart. "Okay, Luo, you can also take one of the rewards." "I can't accept it." Jingwan hurriedly refused. "Why can't I accept it? I just said that there will be rewards for all of you, just for your good idea. Besides, I haven't rewarded you with the song just now. Take this as a reward." At this point, Jingwan had to take a purse and said, "Thank you, Great Elder Princess." Before Sun Yilin returned to the male guest seats, the news of the reward of 10 purses had been spread all over the place. Sure enough, many young masters were very excited and expectant. They were no longer nervous as before. After seeing that Sun Yilin really came back with a purse, their eyes were particularly hot. Sun Yilin seemed to feel that it was inappropriate and put the purse into his sleeve. Luo Peishan finally knew why Diwu Taiqing always pulled his beard. He also wanted to pull his beard now. It was a good thing that his child was outstanding and in the limelight, but too much of the limelight would make people feel confused. Why did such a thing happen unconsciously? His colleagues kept glancing at him with resentful little eyes. They enjoyed it but also felt uncomfortable. Lord Luo raised a good granddaughter. Diwu Taiqing didn't mind the chaos and said faintly. Luo Peishan glared at him. What a sissy old bastard. That's the opportunity given by Great Elder Princess. If your girl didn't mention it, would Great Elder Princess give such a reward? My girl just happened to be there at the right time. If it were someone else, it would be the same. Old bastard, shut up. But it's not someone else. That girl's surname is Luo. Besides, even if others often appear in front of Great Elder Princess, they don't seem to be favored by Great Elder Princess. Such banquets have been held many times. Why didn't anyone mention it? It's one thing to not think of it. Even if you think of it, you don't have the courage to say it. Besides, it's a good thing to benefit everyone. We old guys only think of making profits for our own families and never think of others. Diwu Taiqing seemed to be envious, but he was reminding others that Jingwan played a key role in this matter. Although Great Elder Princess had to build the ladder in the end, without Jingwan, the key first step, there would be no later things. Therefore, the person who benefited in the end must be grateful. Lord Diwu, you think too much. My girl didn't think so much. I may believe you if you say that to others, but I've seen this girl with my own eyes. If you say that she didn't even think of this, Diwu Taiqing stroked his beard and smiled, I don't believe you at all. Luo Peishan gritted his teeth and lowered his voice, that's enough. Diwu Taiqing stroked his beard and nodded. Well, it was almost enough. Lord Luo, I wonder if the third miss of your mansion has been engaged. Li Hongming suddenly asked. Third brother, you've gone too far. Li Hongyi immediately retorted. Although the marriage between that bastardly Hong Yuan and his cousin had not been cancelled, it was already set in stone. It was also a fact that his cousin would marry into the Luo family. In this case, he had already included the Luo family in his line. Now that there was such a girl who might be indebted to many people, how could he let Li Hongming win her over? Eldest brother, why are you so excited? As the saying goes, a good girl is sought after by many families. This is a very normal thing, isn't it? Yes, this was indeed a very normal thing. As long as she was not engaged, as long as there was a suitable man in her family, he could go to her family to ask for her hand in marriage. Even the emperor had no right to interfere. Li Hongyi was so angry that his eyes widened. Thank you for your kindness, Your Highness. My third daughter has already been betrothed to someone else. Many people sighed in their hearts. It was a pity that such a girl could be married without any harm. Oh, I wonder which family he is from. Li Hongming glanced at the young masters present. Your Highness, you don't need to look for him. He hasn't come to Great Elder Princess Mansion. Was it because he didn't come or because he was not qualified? The former was actually less likely, unless he suddenly fell ill. Otherwise, on such an occasion, basically no one would refuse. Did it mean that he was not qualified? Why did Lord Luo choose such a poor family for his granddaughter? However, Lord Luo's second son was actually a little similar to the general's son-in-law. In this case, it was not impossible for his granddaughter to marry into a poor family. That brat had really picked up a big bargain. Li Hongyuan supported his chin with one hand, his entire body lazy. However, someone had stabbed his weak spot again. He really wanted to kill all the people who were spying on his family's Wan. Wan, why didn't I see you make such a big commotion in your previous life? However, it doesn't matter. No matter how big the commotion you make, this prince will take care of it for you. No matter how elegant you are, feel free to show it. Whoever dares to stretch out their claws, they will be chopped up. In fact, there were people on the male guest side who were tempted, but there were also women on the side. However, because there were people who knew about Jingwan's engagement before, there was no need for Madame Luo to explain. The news quickly spread, and Chen Jingmin's identity was naturally exposed. Especially the woman who had been humiliated by Madame Luo before, her voice was the loudest. Those who were originally jealous because of Jingwan's great limelight now only had ridicule and ridicule left. The maidens of the inner residence, before they got married, they competed with nothing more than family background. After they became nuns, they competed with nothing more than their husbands. They only knew how to show off their beautiful things, and the pain and suffering would only rot and mold in their hearts. It must be said that these people were really bored. Their material lives were satisfied, but unfortunately, their spiritual lives were too lacking. That was why they would listen to the wind and rain, and if they didn't say a few words, they would die. Her relatives and friends were originally worried that Jingwan would be upset, but she looked very calm. Her calmness was something that many people couldn't compare to. Moreover, actually, I think that it's not too late to say these things 20 years later. She looked like a dough ball. Not only did she not refute, she even smiled. However, when she refuted, it was so sharp and vicious, hitting the nail on the head. Some of the madams present should have heard a lot of good and bad words 20 years ago. Then, how many of you can confidently say that you are the same as 20 years ago, sweeter on the outside and sweeter on the inside? I believe that there are also people who can slap back those who said all kinds of bad things in front of them and proudly tell them that they are very good. Jingwan's voice was not loud, and she didn't even look back, but the people around her all heard it. One by one, they became mute. Even the ignorant little girls didn't dare to say anything. Among them, there were few who hadn't heard their mothers talk about how glorious they were when they were young, but all kinds of misfortunes and hardships after they got married. Madame Luo, who was sitting with the other madams, was also a little worried at first, but now she was very relieved. This was her granddaughter, the granddaughter who had been raised by her. Jingwan looked at Great Elder Princess with a smile. Great Elder Princess, let's continue the game. Otherwise, they will be anxious. Jingwan raised her chin to the male guests. Great Elder Princess was also deeply touched by her words. This girl is really amazing. The more I look at her, the more I love her. If she marries into the royal family, forget it, I'd better not think about these meaningless things. Great Elder Princess nodded. That was because the 10 prizes were different from the ones given to the female guests earlier. That was, the people who had drawn the lots would not have to put their wooden pieces back. Otherwise, if Jingwan was so lucky that she took a few chances, it would be fine if she didn't take away the prizes, but if one person took all the prizes, the others would definitely feel indignant and resentful. Up until now, it could be said that Jingwan was the only one who was in the limelight. Her words and actions were naturally the center of attention. Her words not only affected the women and young ladies, but also affected the male guests even more. Those who were always bullied and felt inferior and timid couldn't help but straighten their chests, and those who were originally arrogant couldn't help but restrain themselves a little. As for those who were older, most of them were thinking about the past with a little bit of thinking. Li Hongyuan laughed in a low voice, and then laughed louder and louder. His laughter made everyone's hair stand on end. The maid who came with the wood pieces again shrank her head and didn't dare to make a sound. When he was done laughing, he raised his head and looked at the crowd with a smile. Do you think that 20 years later, I'll have no bones left, or I'll still be like now? At least half of the people thought the former. In their opinion, Emperor Luqing couldn't live for 20 years. No matter which prince ascended the throne, he would be the first to be killed. However, people like Qin Tianming were cursing in their hearts. 20 years later, no one would be able to control this emperor. He would most likely be even more arrogant than he was now. Of course, at that time, he would no longer be young. Moreover, the emperor would more or less have some misgivings and might restrain himself. What would Li Hongyuan be like 20 years later? Others didn't know, but he knew. However, that was in the previous life. He was in his early 40s, and his health had long deteriorated. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to wait for his only son to grow up, he might not have survived until then. In this life, he naturally wouldn't let the same thing happen again. 20 years later, he wasn't sure about other things, but he was sure of one thing. He would definitely hold Wan in his arms and bully her however he wanted. Li Hongyuan waved to the little maid holding the wood piece. "Give it to me." The little maid trembled as she came forward and handed over the wood piece. Li Hongyuan glanced at it and handed it to Li Hongming. "Don't embarrass yourself too much." Li Hongming took the wood piece. Sure enough, his name was on it. "I was really chosen. I hope my luck is good." He was a prince and naturally didn't need the reward. However, if he was punished, he would lose a lot of face. Of course, it wouldn't be bad if he could get the reward and give it to his subordinates. Their imperial aunt could decide on the reward and send it directly to Emperor Lu Qing without asking for their father's permission. No one else could do this. This time, many people stood up and bowed to Prince Rui first. Few of the female guests could make Prince Rui bow to them. Great Elder Princess was naturally kind to Li Hongming. She tried her best to treat his elder brother's children equally. "You have to work hard. If you embarrass yourself, it will not only be a matter of face." Li Hongming smiled bitterly. "Imperial aunt, it's not up to me to decide. Why don't you spare me this time?" Great Elder Princess immediately changed her face. "Do you want others to call you a coward in the future?" Li Hongming's face darkened. He gritted his teeth and took out his purse to choose the project. Without giving it to the maid, he opened it himself. He was not very happy, but he was a little relieved. It seemed that he was not very good at it, but he could still finish it. There was no fixed name for the lyrics for the current scene, so it could be simple or complicated. Li Hongming didn't spend so much time thinking about it. Sure enough, it was not outstanding. Great Elder Princess pondered. "Everyone, do you think Prince Rui passed or not?" "Yes," someone said weakly, and then more and more people echoed. "Well, I guess you've passed." Great Elder Princess waved her hand. Of course, there was no reward for him. Most of the people who let him pass did not want him to lose face. In fact, there was no need to think about who the first person to speak was. Li Hongming smiled sincerely and left gracefully. After he went back, no one said anything, but he was ridiculed by Li Hongyuan again. Li Hongming did not dare to refute. When he was young, it was almost the same thing. He just straightened his neck and said, "If you have the ability, why don't you try to compose a song? You want to compete with me, an ignorant and incompetent person?" Li Hongyuan had always been so frank. "If you are chosen, I wish you success in advance. In fact, I want to try all the punishment projects." Since he was so shameless, he was naturally invincible. Even those old pedantic people could only sigh in front of Li Hongyuan. After Prince Rui sadly left, the next few people, some were punished and some passed. None of them was outstanding. The most interesting thing was probably that one of them was punished and got a green waist. Didn't he know how to do it? It didn't matter. Great Elder Princess directly called the dancers in the mansion to teach him how to dance on the spot. His appearance made everyone laugh. It must be said that he was a young master of a commandery prince. In the end, he simply did not care about it and deliberately made fun of it. Even the most dignified noblewomen laughed so hard that they couldn't stand straight. "If it goes on like this, we can't even give out 10 purses." In fact, it was easy for them to give out 10 purses. But if they used the lottery, no matter how capable they were, they would be defeated if they got the one they were not good at. Therefore, they had to rely on luck. Jingwan didn't take it seriously. Luck is also a part of strength. Luck is also a part of strength. Great Elder Princess chewed on this sentence. Well said. Girl, it's your turn to draw this time. Okay. Jingwan nodded and didn't refuse. After Jingwan drew it, the expression on her face was a little subtle. Sun Yijia tilted her head and her face also changed. Seeing them like this, the people next to them all craned their heads to look. Ah, it's Prince Jean. This voice was very exaggerated. There were a few other voices expressing their surprise, one after another. Great Elder Princess was stunned and then laughed. What did you say just now? Luck is also a part of strength. Look at your luck. She was obviously making fun of her. Jingwan stared at the 3 words on the wood for a while and slowly put it down. To be able to draw Jean Qinhuang out, doesn't that mean that this subject's daughter's strength is extraordinary? Just now, when the 3 words Jean Qinhuang were shouted out, the other side had already faintly heard it. Li Hongyuan was very conscious and took advantage of this time to walk over. His hearing was originally extraordinary. Even though Jingwan's voice was small, at this moment, it was clearly transmitted into his ears. Pa pa pa, he clapped his hands and walked closer. These words, Ben Wang likes to hear. He grabbed the performance item with his left hand and directly threw it to Jingwan. Then he took a purse for the punishment item with his right hand. Since you drew me, you will perform for me. Therefore, she was very lucky to meet this person. However, it was not good luck, but bad luck. He would not look for bad luck after the event. He would look for bad luck immediately. Some of these items were specially prepared for men. Although there were many items that coincided with women's, what if she drew the item that she couldn't finish? There were many people who rejoiced in her misfortune. They all saw that Li Hongyuan had already drawn the punishment purse. Of course, if she drew the item to wear women's clothing, it didn't matter. But for the other items, she also had to suffer. She herself had come up with a lot of ideas before. What was this called, moving a stone to smash her own foot? Could she refuse Li Hongyuan's request? Of course not. Jingwan opened the purse. If you can perform well, the reward will be yours. If you can't perform, the punishment will be received by Ben Wang. In addition, if you receive the reward, you can also decide whether Ben Wang should continue to accept the punishment. After all, according to the rules, if you don't perform, you should be punished. Li Hongyuan casually tossed the punishment purse in his hand. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Prince Jean was so good today. Did he eat the wrong medicine? Just based on what you said just now, Ben Wang will make you extraordinarily strong for once. So what? Was this because her words pleased this living king of hell and made him in a good mood, so he wanted to be a gentleman for once? In essence, it was narcissism that had no bounds. Jingwan took out the slip of paper from the purse. Poem, the topic was early spring. To tell the truth, Jingwan had only learned the basics of poetry in this life. For her to write a poem, it was harder than ascending to the heavens. Writing it well was even more impossible. But she remembered a lot of excellent poems. She never thought of taking those out as her own. The problem was that if she couldn't compose it, Li Hongyuan would be punished. He wanted to be a good person now, a gentleman. But after that, she didn't dare to believe in this person's character. Tangled, no matter if you can or can't, at least say something. What are you doing in a daze? Someone impatiently urged. It wasn't someone else, it was the Junju next to Wan Fangfei. Li Hongyuan faintly swept a glance and unsurprisingly met Ruan Fangfei's focused gaze. Under everyone's watchful eyes, she didn't reveal anything. Li Hongyuan didn't doubt that the words he said just now made this woman target Wan Wan. In addition to Wan Wan's previous performance, she attracted everyone's attention. In the past banquets, even if she didn't do anything, she would still be the moon surrounded by stars and the focus of the young master's discussion. Now, who would still remember her? It would be strange if she didn't bear a grudge. No matter how gentle and elegant she appeared to be, she actually hated people who were more dazzling than her the most, as well as those who were as beautiful as they were on the surface. Jingwan now had both of them. Perhaps one more thing should be added. She had obtained Li Hongyuan's attention. Her desire to destroy Jingwan had probably climbed above everyone else. How about I compose a poem? Don't worry, I don't want a reward. Ruan Fangfei suddenly said. It was just that her tone seemed to be a bit too big, as if as long as she could compose a poem, she would definitely be rewarded. However, looking at the expressions of the surrounding people, there wasn't a single person who thought it was strange. Jingwan turned around. Ruan Fangfei was so perfect that it was unreal. How could she forget about this person who might have the same background as her? If that was the case, she would be exposed if she recited a poem. However, right now, it might be an opportunity to determine whether she was the same as her. Alright, Jin Qinwang shouldn't mind, right? But this prospective Ce Fei, without Jia Jijie, she might just be a Wang Fei. Jingwan's smile was a bit ambiguous. Everyone also followed with a kind smile, especially those matrons. They had a deeper meaning. It wasn't that they minded very much. She wouldn't. If he was willing to be punished, she would. She wouldn't mind letting her decide whether he would be punished or not. Wan Wan, you pushed your own husband to someone else. Recorded down and calculated in the future. If he flicked his sleeves and left now, although it would sweep away Ruan Fangfei's face, it was more likely to bring trouble to Wan Wan. This wasn't his original intention. Before he married Wan Wan, he always had to carefully protect her. He wanted to ruin her reputation, and then logically match her with him, who was black from head to toe. But this so-called bad reputation, he couldn't let her be tainted even a little bit. Li Hongyuan's face was expressionless. Ruan Fangfei only took it as his silent consent. Perhaps in this short moment, Ruan Fangfei already had a card up her sleeve and opened her mouth. When she finished reading, many people had already started to discuss, saying, as expected of Miss Ruan, she's still so amazing, this poem is really good. It's graceful and lively, just like Fangfei. There will be another poem in Miss Ruan's book of poems, and so on. In short, it was all praise. Jingwan didn't know how to compose poems, but she knew how to appreciate poems. She had to admit that Ruan Fangfei's poem was quite good. It was indeed worthy of a prize, but it wasn't something she was familiar with. Was it because she didn't know? Or was it actually Ruan Fangfei's original work? If Li Hongyuan knew Jingwan's thoughts, then he would clearly tell her that Ruan Fangfei was indeed an original product. She didn't come from another place like her, nor did she live a second life like him. She was indeed very outstanding, especially in poetry. However, no matter how good her poems were, no matter how beautiful they didn't exceed the category of a girl in the boudoir. If she had more experience and knowledge, then she might be able to leave a legacy for generations. The premise was that she had to grow up like a normal person. Unfortunately, this person's roots were already crooked. He admitted that he himself was crooked, but he could clearly understand himself. Ruan Fangfei wasn't. She thought that she was perfect, outstanding, and that everything she did was right. Let's not punish her, right? Ruan Fangfei looked at Jingwan and suggested. Although that was the case, Jingwan's feeling was different. Ruan Fangfei wasn't suggesting her, but was instructing her. That kind of faintly matter-of-fact attitude, and she was clearly stepping on Jingwan to pretend to be a good person. It was as if it wasn't because of her words, Jingwan would do something overboard. The surrounding people seemed to be used to it and didn't feel anything. Guan Fangfei really had a problem as a person. Her disguise was already deeply rooted in people's hearts. If she was like these people and was imperceptibly influenced for a long time, she would also feel that she was good. Just like Jia Jijia, other than feeling that she was too perfect to be real, she didn't say anything bad about her. This kind of person, if she wasn't dangerous, then it was fine. If she was dangerous, then the danger factor would be very high. Therefore, if it wasn't necessary, one must not come into contact with her and stay as far away as possible. Jingwan originally didn't want Jin Qinhuang to make a fool of himself, so she naturally agreed. However, Li Hongyuan had already opened the pouch in his hand. Looking at the words on the paper, his lips hooked up. That appearance was really very bewitching. When Ben Wang was young, Mu Fei and I wore female children's clothing. Ben Wang himself couldn't see, but Mu Fei and the palace maids by her side all said that it was unbelievably beautiful. How could the crowd not understand what kind of punishment he received? Those who had seen Li Hongyuan's appearance when he was young couldn't help but nod. At that time, it was hard to tell whether he was a boy or a girl. He was really very exquisite and beautiful, and no one could compare to him. Who knew how many people wanted to take him home to raise him, but Su Guifei kept a close eye on him and Lu Qingdi protected him tightly. Slowly, this boy became a bit of a scoundrel. The more he grew, the more crooked he became, and the more unlikable he became. Sure enough, Li Hongyuan turned the front of the paper to face the crowd, don't want to see. As he spoke, he thoughtfully touched his chin, this face now, if I dress it up properly and cover the places that should be covered, perhaps it would also look good? If I wear a more suitable set of clothes. To tell the truth, right now, Li Hongyuan's body was first class. Even if that face was more handsome, it wouldn't be mistaken for a woman. It was hard for them to imagine what he would look like if he wore female clothing and makeup. On the contrary, when Jingwan heard his words, she was very eager to give it a try. In her previous life, there were a lot of men cross-dressing. Even if it was a masculine man, after careful dressing, he would still be very beautiful. If Li Hongyuan's face was well painted, it would definitely be a first-class super beauty. Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan's small eyes. How could he not understand what she was thinking? His family's Wan wanted to see it, so it wasn't that he couldn't sacrifice a bit. However, not now. He didn't have the idea of entertaining everyone. After marriage, she could close the door and slowly toss about. Li Hongyuan threw the paper and the pouch back. Many people were a little regretful. They knew that it was impossible for Jin Qinhuang to be willing to wear female clothing. He was just teasing them. Guan Fangfei was relieved. How could he really throw her face? Was it over like this? How could it be? A certain male peacock hadn't fallen in love with the woman he liked yet. Just when everyone thought that he would leave, Li Hongyuan opened another performance pouch. He looked at it, rubbed it out, threw it away, opened it again, threw it away, opened it again, threw it away, opened it again, threw it away again, opened it again, threw it away again, opened it again, threw it away again, opened it again and threw it away again. Not to mention the female guests, even the male guests' mouths were twitching. Everyone believed that if he couldn't find a performance that satisfied him, he would probably open all the pouches. Great Elder Princess resisted the urge to beat this bastard. When he opened the sixth pouch, Li Hongyuan was finally satisfied. This one. The maid looked at Great Elder Princess helplessly. Chapter 102. Li Hongyuan chose riding, which was indeed the best way to show off a man's valiance. However, Because there were no more requirements, and it was not about comparing with others, how to be outstanding, eye-catching, and make people clap their hands and applaud. This required excellent riding skills to create enough thrills and excitement. If it was just simply riding the horse out for a round, it would definitely not pass. It was not unexpected that he would make such a choice. He, Li Hongyuan, was not good at other things, but he was absolutely adept at eating, drinking, and having fun. That was eating out of class, drinking out of taste, playing out of style. There were not many people who could compare to him in terms of riding skills. While the capital's hedonistic sons were afraid of him, they also wanted to follow behind him. As long as this person did not get angry, they would definitely be very comfortable. Unfortunately, he was used to enjoying himself and was not interested in taking them to play with him. As for the horses in Great Elder Princess's mansion, they were definitely not bad. The horses prepared for the performances of the childs were all carefully selected. The breed of the horses had to be good, and at the same time, gentle and obedient. What if the irritable and disobedient horse accidentally hurt people? As soon as the carefully selected horse was pulled to the front of Li Hongyuan, he just glanced at it and said, "Change." Anyway, he had prepared several horses, and there must be one that could satisfy him. When he changed to the third horse, Li Hongyuan directly looked at Great Elder Princess and said, "Imperial Aunt, are the horses in your mansion just like these? Can't you find a horse that is a little bit better?" Great Elder Princess was almost irritated by him. Although it was not the best horse in the mansion, it was definitely a first-class horse compared with the horses raised by many people. How could this bastard think it was not good enough? It must be said that he was spoiled by his imperial brother. All the good things were given to him first, and he didn't like the inferior things. Jing Yuan felt that she probably knew why Jin Qinhuang was so hateful. It must be said that his temper was cruel and ruthless, but it was not to the extent that he would lay his hands on his loved ones. But he deliberately pulled the hatred of this group of people together. So it turned out that this mouth was really too damaging. And that attitude of his, perhaps he himself did not feel any special meaning, but in the eyes of others, that was showing off all the time. He looked at the best things in other people's houses as if they were garbage, which could only mean that the worst things in his hands were better than this. How could he not make others jealous? Li Hongyuan didn't know these things. No, he must know. Sometimes he did it on purpose, sometimes it was purely out of habit, and he didn't notice these things at all. The more he was like this, the more people wanted to chop him up. This kind of thing could become a habit. He was not piled up by mountains of gold and silver, but by a lot of treasures in the world that money in the world could not buy. Go and bring out the new horse of the prince consort to Prince Jin. Great Elder Princess said with a cold face. The prince consort naturally wouldn't say anything about the decision of Great Elder Princess, but after all, it was the prince consort's favorite horse. He had to take time to take a look at it every day. The most important thing was that the horse was wild and hard to tame, and it had not been completely tamed until now. Except for the manservant who took care of it every day and Prince Consort Jiang, it was even difficult for others to get close to it. It was better to inform the prince consort about this matter. If the couple quarreled about it later, it would not be beautiful. Prince Consort Jiang heard the manservant's report in a hurry, and they also saw that Li Hongyuan was indeed in a deadlock for a long time because of the choice of the horse. Prince Consort Jiang also knew that Li Hongyuan had the ability to annoy people, so he sighed and said, "I'll listen to Princess." The horse was brought over at the fastest speed. Except for a tuft of white hair on the top of its head and 4 hooves, the rest of its body was almost black. The manservant carried the saddle and other things. Obviously, he didn't want those things to be on his body. This horse might finally be acceptable. Li Hongyuan stood up, but the horse took 2 steps back and even snorted at Li Hongyuan and kicked its hooves. Even the horse didn't like him. The manservant was shocked and hurriedly pulled the reins. Li Hongyuan didn't mind at all. He took 2 steps forward and waved his hand for the manservant to move to the side. The manservant was worried that the horse would hurt him, but he didn't dare to disobey his orders. He could only take 2 steps back, but he didn't dare to go too far. Li Hongyuan patted the horse's neck. The horse whinnied and almost raised its hooves. However, it didn't do so in the end. This was because Li Hongyuan's arm went from the bottom of its neck to the other side as if he was hugging it with one hand. Its hooves kicked the ground a few times anxiously, as if it could attack him at any time. The manservant only felt his heart skip a beat. However, miraculously, the horse slowly became docile. Its raised head also slightly lowered. Old Six's ability to train horses is still so amazing. No matter how fierce the horse is, no matter how much it dislikes him at the beginning, it will quickly become docile under his hands. There is no exception. Everything he does is clearly seen in his eyes, but if others do it, it will have no effect at all. Li Hongming sighed. Old Six's horse training ability is so amazing. Li Hongyi, on the other hand, didn't look so good. It was not the first time that he had been injured when Li Hongyuan was riding a horse. Moreover, it reminded him of the time when Li Hongyuan stepped on his back and almost overturned the carriage when he was riding a horse. Now the injury on his back hadn't healed yet. If it weren't for Great Elder Princess's birthday, he wouldn't go out today. Even so, he had to admit that Li Hongming's words were true. Li Hongyuan's unique skills could not be learned by others. Was Li Hongyuan good at training horses? Judging from the speed of the horse's obedience, he was indeed good. But the fact was that he was not good at training horses. He just used his power to frighten them. Did you know what animal he killed the most in his previous life? It was a horse, a war horse. Not only did he kill the enemy's warhorses on the battlefield, but he also encountered an accident during a march. Not only did he get lost, but he was also surrounded and intercepted by the enemy. The dry rations he had brought with him were all gone, and he had nowhere else to go. Li Hongyuan gave the order to kill the horses, but the soldiers were unwilling to do so. Li Hongyuan also didn't give the order to kill the horses. Instead, he did it himself. Over 100 horses were all killed by him. From then on, no matter what kind of horse it was innately repelled by him and was especially afraid of him. Some animals were very intelligent. They seemed to be able to feel some things. Even if Li Hongyuan was reborn, the things engraved in the depths of his soul could not be erased. He was never liked by horses. The one he often rode now was an exception. Perhaps it was used to it, but it was close to him. He didn't want to change this. All he wanted was for them to submit. The reason why the horse was so docile now was because it felt that its life was threatened. The arm around its neck told it that if it dared to resist, it would break its neck and flip it to the ground, never to get up again. Li Hongyuan patted the horse's neck again. A beast will be a beast. Saddle the horse. The process of saddling the horse was very smooth. It was so smooth that the servant could not believe it. Then, he looked at Li Hongyuan with eyes full of admiration. If he knew the reason, he would be scared shitless. Li Hongyuan flipped onto the horse in an exceptionally elegant manner. It was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but he glanced at the female guest seats. With just one glance, it was unknown how many young ladies' heartbeats sped up. There was no other way. This person's reputation was indeed terrible, but the lethality of his appearance was too great. Now, it would not cause any harm to them. In addition, that heroic posture of mounting the horse was really convincing. Therefore, it did not prevent them from secretly fantasizing. Jing Wan was speechless at this Jin Qin Wang who was always flirting with people. When he was not scourging people, he was a super scourge. If he deliberately went to harm people, it was unknown how many people would fall into his hands. Well, the people that he deliberately wanted to flirt with were not flirted with this time. Those that he was not interested in, he flirted with a bunch. However, Li Hongyuan completely ignored these people. Pulling the reins, his feet squeezed the horse's belly. The horse obediently began to run. In a very short period of time, Li Hongyuan made the horse run at its fastest speed. Then, it rushed onto the flower terrace. Under his control, the horse leaped, and by the edge of the flower terrace, it leaped onto the corridor next to the lake. It must be said that the corridor's width was not as long as the horse's body. It was about to cross the corridor and fall into the lake from the other side. It caused many people to cry out in alarm. There were even more women who subconsciously covered their eyes. However, some people were indifferent and even looked at it with high spirits. Obviously, it was not the first time that Li Hongyuan did this kind of thing. The horse turned its body. The degree of the twist made people think that it would break its spine. However, it did not. The body that had already leaped out of the lake turned back, and its hind legs happened to step on the corridor's guardrail. With a crack, the solid stone guardrail cracked. Then, there was even a part that directly splashed out and fell into the water. The horse carried Li Hongyuan along the corridor and went far away. And in such a short period of time, it made people tremble with fear and their hearts beat faster. The corridor on the lake was not straight. Instead, it had 9 bends and 18 bends. Every corner was almost vertical. In some places, the distance between the 2 corners was also less than the length of the horse's body. But even so, the horse was always able to smoothly pass through. Later, you would find that it did not even touch the guardrail. It must be said that Jin Qinhuang's riding skills are really superb. If I didn't know that this horse was indeed transported back to the capital from outside and entered Great Princess Royal's Fu, I would have thought that Jin Qinhuang was its former master. With this degree of proficiency in riding, no one would believe that it was the first time he cooperated with it. Prince Consort Jiang sighed and said. In fact, his heart was a bit sour. Although this horse was new, in reality, it was not new. He had only tried to ride it once or twice, and this beast was not very cooperative. It was lazy, as if it did not want to pay attention to him. Now that it was running, it was really a white-eyed horse. The others at the side all nodded in agreement. Li Hongyuan once again straddled the 2 close-by corridors. Originally, they thought that the previous play would repeat itself. However, everyone was wrong once again. The horse directly stepped on the guardrail and its entire body soared into the air. His goal was actually the small island on the lake that was more than 1 zhang away. It landed steadily and its hind hooves touched a little bit of the water. That force also splashed a lot of water. Stepping on the flowers, crossing over the flowers and trees, it leaped onto a lower rockery. With another leap, it went onto another rockery. This repeated several times until the horse and the person reached the highest point. The horse neighed, its front hooves raised high, and the person on the horse's back was cold and handsome. At that moment, it made Jingwan think of a very classic picture from her previous life. The appearance of a certain great Western emperor riding a divine horse and facing the wind was truly, even those who didn't like Li Hongyuan couldn't help secretly applauding at this moment, not to mention those young masters who had only heard of Li Hongyuan's bad reputation but actually had little contact with him. In fact, they were so afraid of Li Hongyuan. In fact, there were not many people who had really been beaten by him. The main reason was that his means were a little cruel. 1 person spread it to 10 people, and 10 people spread it to 100 people. Everyone subconsciously regarded him as the god of plague and avoided him. Unexpectedly, Prince Jin's horsemanship was so exquisite. As the saying went, it was easy to go up, but difficult to come down. Was it difficult for Li Hongyuan? He told you with action that it was not difficult. Similarly, he didn't carefully control the horse to come down bit by bit. Instead, he directly jumped down and went straight to the lake. What was he going to do? Great Elder Princess was so shocked that she stood up. Perhaps some people thought that he was bound to fall into the water this time, but would Li Hongyuan let people see his heroic appearance one moment and then see him fall into the water the next moment? Definitely not. The horse fell on the water, and then jumped up again. After a few jumps and falls, it returned to the corridor again. What was going on? Could the horse run on the water? It turned out that there were a lot of round stones under the water. Some were high and some were low, and some were exposed to the water, but the people on the shore couldn't see them. If the horse could really run on the water, it would be really strange. In Jingwan's view, this was definitely 10 times or 100 times more exciting than the highest standard equestrian competition in her previous life and the most intense horse racing competition. However, Prince Jean was simply playing with his heartbeat and even his life. If the onlookers were like this, then how did he feel as the person involved? If he made a mistake, if he didn't cooperate well, it was possible. Didn't he have the slightest fear in his heart? Seeing that he was so bold and controlled the horse without stagnation, what gave him such confidence and fearlessness? Going back along the corridor, Li Hongyuan went ashore and landed on the men's side. He slid off the horse, and the horse trotted a few steps before stopping. Compared with Li Hongyuan's refreshed look, the horse was a little breathless. Prince Consort Jiang was so distressed that he hurriedly asked someone to take the horse back to take care of it. Li Hongyuan's riding skills were beyond doubt, but according to his way of playing, few horses could last him for a long time. Did this performance pass? It was more than pass. She might not see it a second time in her life. Those who thought that their riding skills were excellent would probably not dare to brag about it in the future. However, should she give Li Hongyuan a reward? Great Elder Princess gritted her teeth and said that she shouldn't even think about it. It was good enough that she didn't ask him for compensation for destroying the things in her mansion. As for this reward, Jingwan wouldn't want it, but Wan Fangfei wanted it. She didn't care about what it was, but cared about its relationship with Li Hongyuan. Unfortunately, she couldn't ask for it. However, after such an experience, no one remembered that Wan Fangfei was a poet. In the past, it had already been spread all over the country. Even some old adults might praise it. If the limelight had been stolen by others, she might have bidden the other party to death in her heart, or think of a way to get it back after the event. However, it was Li Hongyuan. Not only did she not hate him, but her whole heart was fluttering. Anyway, he would be hers, so it didn't matter. There were 8 rewards before, and now there were still 8 rewards. Then they continued, "Master, it's time for the banquet." It turned out that she was so happy that she forgot the time. Great Elder Princess made the decision to continue the banquet the next day. As for the opera after the banquet, it was all cancelled. Great Elder Princess was the birthday girl today. She was originally the eldest, so Prince Consort Jiang couldn't do anything. Great Elder Princess had already said that if they couldn't take all 8 rewards in the first round, the second round would be held. If they couldn't take all 8 rewards in the second round, the group of young masters were all very depressed. If they were asked to choose what they were good at like Prince Jean, it wouldn't take long for them to divide all the rewards, let alone 8. Unfortunately, when it came to Great Elder Princess, they still had to follow the rules obediently. Prince Jean was the only one, so there was no way to imitate him. Before taking the banquet, Jingwan went to Madame Luo and asked, "Grandma, where is 4th sister?" "I've found her. Now she's in the guest courtyard of Great Elder Princess's mansion. I'll ask someone to keep an eye on her." Jingwan nodded. If she rushed out of Great Elder Princess's mansion with a pig's head, she would be criticized by others. She might even offend Great Elder Princess. Granddaughter, go and see her. Old Madame Luo nodded. She knew that Jingwan had a good temper, but she was definitely not the type to repay evil with good. It was normal for Jingwan to want to teach her a lesson because of what Jingwan had done. She knew that Jingwan would do things with discretion, so she didn't need to remind her. Jingwan found the place where Luo Jingying was. Her two maids and wet nurse were outside the door. When they saw Jingwan, they almost shrank into a ball. Luo Jingying's condition was worse than she had expected. Perhaps because she was disobedient, her grandma directly ordered people to tie her up and gag her. Her red and swollen face was exposed. Seeing Jingwan, Luo Jingying, who had been quiet, went crazy again. She stood up and wanted to hit Jingwan. However, the two old maids left by Madame Luo were not to be trifled with. They quickly held her down and forced her to sit back. Luo Jingying stared at Jingwan. Her hatred was almost tangible. She kept murmuring to Jingwan. Jingwan looked at her calmly and even reached out to touch her face. This time, her grandma probably really wanted to punish her severely. It had been so long, but she hadn't asked anyone to apply medicine to her face. Luo Jingying wanted to turn her head away. Unfortunately, before Jingwan could do anything, an old maid pinched her neck and forced her to turn her head. If her eyes could kill, the old maid would have been stabbed into meat paste. However, the old maid didn't care. On the one hand, she probably wanted to please Jingwan. On the other hand, she probably wanted to vent her resentment. It was not easy for them to come to Great Elder Princess's mansion. However, because of this girl, they had to stay here instead of watching the fun outside. Apart from other things, they could see so many noble people, which was enough for them to go back and show off for a long time. Now, if they were asked, they couldn't give a good explanation. How shameful it would be. Because Jingwan's fingers were still bandaged, they were naturally not as smooth as her fingers. She rubbed Luo Jingying's face back and forth, making Luo Jingying roar even more fiercely. Do you know what you look like now? Go get a basin of water and let our fourth miss look at herself. She can see more clearly than a bronze mirror. Since Luo Jingying always made trouble for her fourth miss, Jingwan's maids were naturally very angry. At this moment, they were very active in getting water. They moved a stool and put the basin of water in front of Luo Jingying. In order to prevent her from kicking over the basin, the old maid simply tied her feet to the legs of the chair. Jingwan didn't agree with this method. However, if this person was Luo Jingying, she just looked at her coldly. Jingwan pointed at the basin of water and said, "Look at yourself." Seeing that she still straightened her neck and stared at Jingwan fiercely, the old maid said, "It's probably inconvenient for 4th Mississippi help her." Without hesitation, the old maid held her head and pressed it above the basin of water. Even if Luo Jingying didn't want to see it, her swollen face was reflected in her eyes at the first moment. Luo Jingying knew that her face was terrible, but she didn't expect it to be so terrible. Like many other girls, she valued her face more than her life. Now she looked like this. Luo Jingying widened her eyes and even couldn't believe that it was her. She began to struggle desperately, trying to overturn the basin of water. Unfortunately, you know better than me what kind of person Li Ruyu is. When you went to find her, you should have thought of the possibility of being bitten by her. Even if you wanted to set me up, there are so many princesses and ladies with much higher status than me. Why did you have to find her? Of course, she has an advantage over others. She has a small conflict with me, so it's easier for you to sow discord. In fact, there was probably another reason that Li Ruyu was reckless and brainless. Jingwan knew that, so did Luo Jingying. However, it was difficult to control this kind of person who did everything according to her own preferences. The others are different. They may be tempted, but they won't do anything impolite. They are more likely to exchange benefits with me. Maybe they can use this opportunity to get closer to me. This is not what you want to see. Speaking of which, your ultimate goal is undoubtedly the secret formula in my hands. Actually, if you were more patient and slowly plotted, would have taken out the formula in my hands sooner or later. After all, Sister Jia and the others are also using it. It's only a matter of time before they find out. They are of noble status, so it's impossible for me not to give it to them. To me, it doesn't matter if it's one person or a group of people. As long as it's an outsider, it doesn't make a difference. That's why I'm curious. What made you so angry and impatient that you used such a simple and crude method? You didn't even try to hide your true intentions. Third Aunt definitely didn't teach you to do this. Tell me, if Third Aunt finds out about this, will she die of anger? You've ruined her heroic reputation. Jingwan leisurely sat down beside her and tilted her head to look at her. Also, if you set up your sisters so brazenly, when you go back, it won't be as simple as being locked up. Even though you knew this, you still did it without hesitation. Are you really going crazy because you want to harm me, or are you confident that you can escape punishment? Luo Jingying kept murmuring to Jingwan, I know you won't tell me. I was just asking and didn't want an answer, so I didn't intend to let you go. At least you can let me have some peace by doing this. Let me do it. In fact, I want to thank you. If it weren't for you, how could I play the zither? Jingwan said and looked at her fingers. Although it's a little tragic, I became famous after playing the zither, won the applause of the audience, won the favor of great elder princess, and then the grand occasion that you don't know later. Now, few of the nobles in the capital city will forget me. Look, it's all because of you. Jingwan sighed softly. Alas, in fact, fourth sister likes me the most. You paved the way for me with your face. Otherwise, at this time, I'm afraid that I'm still sitting in the corner unknown. Tell me, how should I repay you? Jingwan's maidservant covered her mouth as her shoulders trembled. Her family's young miss was really too bad. Whenever fourth young miss was in pain, she would poke her there. However, her family's young miss was so bad that it was not annoying at all. It was all fourth young miss's fault in the first place. Her family's young miss had always been kind to others. There were so many sisters in the Fu, and her young miss was not good to any of them. Only fourth young miss, who only knew how to blame others and never saw her own fault. She always saw others not treating her well. Jingwan glanced at the two of them. The two of them quickly retracted their smiles and stood properly. Luo Jingying had never hated Luo Jingwan so much. She thought, this bitch, her mother was right. This bitch was born to be her jinx. As long as this bitch was alive, she would not have a good life. Didn't she know what was going on outside? Didn't she know that Jingwan had caused a storm? She knew that these two damn bitches would take turns to go out and then come back to tell another person what they had heard from the servants in Great Elder Princess's mansion. In fact, they were talking to her. Luo Jingwan was so glamorous, so intelligent, and so likable. She had fought for opportunities for the 10 young masters. So many people were grateful to her, and so many people wanted to marry her as their daughter-in-law, or granddaughter-in-law. The most famous girl in the capital was completely overshadowed by her. This was what Luo Jingying used to think. Time and time again, she dreamed of standing at the highest position, being favored by the nobles, pursued by all the young masters, and carefully protected by them. She was envied by all the other noble ladies, and all of them tried to curry favor with her and flatter her. She could decide the life and death of others with just one word. She laughed very happily, but when she woke up, the lonely little courtyard made her want to go crazy. She studied hard and learned a lot of things step by step. In a few years, she gained a little reputation in the capital city. Even if she didn't want to admit it, her reputation was actually only in the middle and lower classes. She couldn't even touch the threshold of the highest circle in the capital city. Luo Jingwan, on the other hand, did not know anything. She was just a slut who worked with mud and raised flowers. She had only been in the capital for a month, but she had already hooked up with someone whom she could not even hook up with no matter how hard she tried. However, that person's face was disfigured very quickly. Luo Jingwan was her nemesis. She was so happy, and she was even happier because she would soon be able to enter Prince Roy's mansion. However, this good mood did not last long. Not only did she fail to scheme against Luo Jingwan, but she had also gotten herself into deep trouble. In just a short period of time, this slut had soared into the sky and achieved something that others could not achieve in a few years or even a lifetime. All these were the opportunities she created for her, the opportunities she created. This glory should have belonged to him. Luo Jingying roared at Jingwan, and her eyes were bloodshot, like a beast who was about to lose its mind. Seeing her like this, even her own maidservant and wet nurse who were peeking outside the door were shocked. How did their miss turn into such a demon-like appearance? Jingwan looked at her calmly. Once a person went crazy, she couldn't be called a person anymore. People like Luo Jingying were hopeless unless she really sobered up. Jingwan didn't intend to do anything to her. Her grandmother would deal with her. She didn't want to dirty her hands. Now it was enough to provoke her. By the way, when she went back, she would tell concubine Huan of the third branch that the drum was guarded and not anyone could beat it. If her third uncle really divorced his wife, even if she couldn't be the legal wife, she could make the third branch have no mistress in the backyard. Fourth miss is not well now. You take good care of her. There are many noble people in Great Elder Princess's mansion. Don't offend them. Yes, third miss, don't worry. We will take good care of fourth Mississippi, Jingwan nodded, and then looked at Luo Jingying. If a girl is known to be crazy, what do you think the consequences will be? So, Luo Jingying, sober up and don't do stupid things. She reached out and pulled the cloth from her mouth. If a girl went crazy, her family had a reason to lock her up for life. Even if she looked normal, no one would come to her house to marry her. Who wouldn't worry about marrying a crazy girl who might go crazy at any time? Luo Jingying bit the tip of her tongue until it bled, and then she restrained herself from roaring out. Watching Jingwan walk out of the door, she gnashed her teeth and cursed in a low voice, Luo Jingwan, you bitch. You will die a horrible death. You will die a horrible death. Her words were like a gust of wind, gently blowing past Jingwan's ears. After a while, they would not leave any trace. Jingwan stood outside the door and looked at the three servants who served Luo Jingying. The three of you failed to protect your master, so you are demoted to be rough maids. When you go back, go to the outer yard to do the cleaning. To be able to serve their master, of course, they wouldn't be idiots who couldn't understand. Although on the surface, she was demoting them, in fact, she was saving them. If Jingwan didn't punish them, then according to Madame Lu's character, they would be beaten to death or directly sold. The three servants hurriedly knelt down. We are willing to be punished. We are willing to be punished. Jingwan saved them out of sincerity. However, in Luo Jingying's eyes, she was pretending to be a good person and even bribed the people around her. So, Jingwan wanted to tell her in front of her, I did it. What are you going to do about it? If you want to scold me, then scold me. What else can you do aside from scolding me? Anyway, as long as these three servants were smart, they would quickly go to the outer yard without waiting for her third aunt to free up her hands. Then, Mrs. Lu could only watch helplessly. After all, she was not the master of the inner yard, nor was she the daughter-in-law of the household. At most, she could manage the people and things in her own yard. She had no right to intervene in other places. After leaving the guest courtyard, Jingwan saw Sun Yijia waiting there. She smiled. Sister Jia, why are you here? Aren't I waiting for you to come together? Have you dealt with it? She looked inside as if she was referring to something. There's nothing to deal with. I just said a few words. Sun Yijia had seen the power of Sister Wan's words. Usually, she was good, but in special situations, the people she targeted could only pray for themselves. For a formal banquet, the female guests' table was naturally in the inner yard, and the male guests' table was in the outer yard. The guest courtyard for the female guests was naturally in the inner yard, and it wasn't particularly far from here. It must be said that this banquet wasn't something that could be held as and when one said so, the delay wasn't a big deal. The two of them chatted and laughed as they walked. Then, Jingwan was intercepted again on the way. Although one of the people who intercepted her was a maidservant that she didn't recognize, the other was Luo Peishan's manservant. Third young lady, master is looking for you to go to the outer yard. Are you sure that grandfather is looking for me? It wasn't that Jingwan suspected anything, but that her grandfather wouldn't look for her during a meal. That manservant smiled. As expected, I can't hide it from third young lady. Actually, it's Grand Secretary Jiang and Prince Consort Jiang. Alright, Jingwan understood. They couldn't wait any longer. Forget it, she could understand their feelings. Alright, then I'll go over. Sister Jia, what about you? Do you want to come with me? I won't go. With you around, I'll only be left out, so I won't go. Alright, then go take your seat, my future sister-in-law. Jingwan replied with a smile. Sun Yijia was embarrassed and angry. She was so angry that she wanted to pinch her. You really don't lose out at all with that mouth of yours. Jingwan dodged her evil claws and left without looking back. To avoid clashing with other people, Jingwan was directly led to Prince Consort Jiang's outer study. Alright, the people waiting here were not only her grandfather, but also the two people that the manservant mentioned. Other than Lord Diwu, there was also the Grand Secretary, Wan Rui's Hong. Because someone in Jiang Ji's family was related to Prince Rui's family by marriage, he was tacitly considered to be part of Prince Rui's family. In fact, he was a relatively neutral person. Apart from his duties, he didn't like to meddle in other people's business. When he had nothing to do, he would play the zither, study the zither scores, drink with his old friends, and occasionally take the birdcage out for a walk after a break. Therefore, it could be said that the people gathered here, including Prince Consort Jiang who had no authority, were all neutral people. Jingwan greeted them one by one. Among these people, other than Prince Consort Jiang, they were all in high positions and had accumulated a lot of power. Even Prince Consort Jiang was used to dealing with influential people, so the aura on his body was naturally extraordinary. If a normal young lady saw this for the first time, they would be a bit scared and trembling. Even those princesses and infanta were the same. However, Jingwan wasn't like that. She was well-behaved and had a natural expression. She stood upright with her eyes slightly lowered. Whether this was an act or if it was real, it naturally couldn't be hidden from this group of old people who had become shrewd. They nodded slightly with some praise. To say something disgraceful, this young lady, even if she was the empress who was the mother of the world, she didn't need to train and adapt. She could sit steadily and maintain her composure at the fastest speed. Grand Secretary Wan sighed a bit. She originally thought that her youngest daughter of the first wife was already at the top of her age. Now, it seemed that she was still far from it. People of their status and age naturally wouldn't judge a person based on talent. Think about it, Jingwan had already reached the height of being the mother of the world in their eyes. Naturally, there was nothing to nitpick about. Grand Secretary Zhang's gaze landed on Jingwan's hand. Although half of it was covered by her sleeve, it could still be seen. He frowned with some displeasure. You hurt your hand. This hand is the most important for a zither player. How could you be so careless? Replying to my lord, my daughter accidentally entered the realm today, which resulted in this result. In reality, my daughter's zither skills haven't reached that level yet. Naturally, I will be more careful in the future. Grand Secretary Zhang's brows then relaxed. That zither isn't suitable for you. When you practice, change to a more suitable one. Yes, my daughter will remember my lord's teachings. Rinxuan, she's still a young lady. Don't be so serious. Be careful not to scare her. This young lady's music is amazing. Who knows, she might even become your close friend. Guan Ruizhong smiled and said. I forgot that the Grand Secretary has a daughter around the same age. It seems that the Grand Secretary is used to being a loving father and is especially protective of young ladies around the same age. It's hard to say whether they'll become close friends or not. In such matters, the one who reaches the top is the first. If fate allows it in the future, it's not impossible to have such a young friend. Jingwan smiled. Although Grand Secretary Zhang's words and actions were a bit reserved and cold, he was a rare open-minded and straightforward person. To be able to sit in the position of Grand Secretary in the inner pavilion, the Zhang family must have put in a lot of effort. If my granddaughter has nothing to do, just take care of the flowers. Don't do things like playing the zither that will hurt your hand. When Luo Peishan knew that Jingwan had hurt her hand, his heart ached. Therefore, it was better for her to not play the zither in the future. She should take care of the flowers and draw a few strokes when she had nothing to do. When she was bored, she should read the newspaper. Otherwise, she could chat with her grandfather about her experiences in taking care of flowers. Grand Secretary Jiang looked at Luo Peishan and frowned. Just as he was about to say something, Prince Consort Jiang immediately stood up. This uncle of his was obsessed with the zither and would not allow anyone to say anything bad about him. Miss Luo's hand is injured. I'm afraid she won't be able to copy it. Does the Luo family have this music score? The music score is in Qi and Prefecture and was not brought to the capital. The injury is not serious and will not affect it much. The fingers are connected to the heart. Let's talk about it after your injury is healed. Although Grand Secretary Jiang was eager to get the music score, he could not be unreasonable. Rest assured, my lord. It's really not serious. It could only be said that Jingwan's medicine was miraculous. The most painful moment had passed and she did not feel much pain now. My daughter can write it down now. You really won't force it. I won't force it. Okay, then write it down now. Grand Secretary Zhang's tone had a trace of eagerness. The others smiled but did not say anything. At this moment, the servants were all outside. Prince Consort Jiang was very active in grinding. Jingwan was slightly stunned. Well, there was no need to be so anxious. After all, he was the prince consort of great elder princess. Grinding for a little girl like her would shorten his life. Grand Secretary Jiang scolded and called his servant in. Seeing Jingwan's puzzled eyes, Prince Consort Jiang also felt a little embarrassed. Lord Diwu snorted and said, "Little girl, why do you think Prince Consort Jiang is so anxious?" It's because he wants to get the 18 scholars as soon as possible. He just wants to finish the matter of the music score as soon as possible. After all, Grand Secretary Jiang is an elder. Since he got the news, he has been restless and can't wait to get the treasure as soon as possible. At this moment, he probably wants to discuss with you and ask his men to go directly to the Luo family to get the treasure. When Jingwan gave out a pot of 18 scholars, Luo Peishan felt distressed, while Lord Diwu was indignant. He obviously found it first, but now it was going to fall into the hands of others. Prince Consort Jiang did not deny it. It seemed that he really had this idea. After the banquet, I may have to go back to the Luo family for something. I will bring the flowers here. Prince Consort Jiang heard that Jingwan was going to the Luo family for him. This little girl was really considerate. It was said that those pots of treasures were raised in this girl's courtyard. It couldn't be better if she could go back and get them herself. Moreover, they were planted by this girl. She definitely knew better than anyone how to protect the flowers in the best condition. Grand Secretary Jiang only wanted to slap him for his virtue, but there were so many people, so he still wanted to save some face for him. Jingwan held the brush. Although the pain intensified, it did not affect her much. She first wrote 4 words, ambush from all sides. Ambush from all sides. Is this the name of the zither piece? Jingwan nodded. Then she wrote from memory and told Grand Secretary Jiang what Great Elder Princess said. Grand Secretary Jiang immediately became excited. Sure enough, Elder Jiang became excited in an instant. Great Elder Princess is right. This song is very likely to be that song. Good, it's really great. Although this song is a pipa song, I've always wanted to listen to it and then change it into a zither song. I've been looking for it all these years, but it's nowhere to be found. I didn't expect that I would suddenly see it today. It's true that I've searched high and low for it, only to find it by chance. Jingwan laughed. If a piece of music could really make an old man so happy, it was worth it. Moreover, according to Grand Secretary Jiang's character, he would definitely spread this piece of music. She came here from another world and also spread it widely. She should not be wrong. She handed the 2 pieces of music to Grand Secretary Jiang. Grand Secretary Jiang held them in his hands as if he had received a treasure. His smile was like that of a child who had received candy. After this matter was over, they could talk about other things. What else could they do except for flowers? When they were about to speak, Prince Consort Jiang's servant's voice sounded from outside the door. Prince Consort, His Majesty's Imperial Edict has arrived. They were all used to receiving imperial edicts, so the people in the study were all calm. Luo Peishan told Jingwan a few words, and then Prince Consort Jiang asked someone to take her away. All the people in the mansion had to be present. Jingwan joined the group of female guests from the side. The imperial edict was a reward for Great Elder Princess. However, the eunuch also brought an oral edict. More or less, that evil spawn of a son of this emperor was indeed a person without good fortune. It was really a happy thing that Sun Yijia was safe and sound. The wedding date did not need to be postponed. Sun Yijia was supposed to get married on the same day as before. The place where she would settle down at the end would just be changed. Well, there would basically be no more mistakes in this matter. Except that the Luo family would be very busy, there was nothing else.